Welcome to the first round recap here at this 15th season of Blood, Sweat, and Beers. Welcome to 15 of 15, week 15, our first round of the playoffs in our 15th season here at Blood, Sweat, and Beers. Was it what you expected? Was it what you had hoped? Well, for a couple of teams, it definitely was, and for a couple of teams, it definitely was not. That's the way life goes. That's the way fantasy goes. Let's take a look at the scoreboard from this past week. Kamish did his job taking care of business. That was an interesting game. Just under 9-point spread. Basically, it came down to Christian McCaffrey. Had he done a normal 30-point game, well, Seth Mike would have been advancing to the next round of the playoffs. But my thank you card is already in the mail. I'm sure along with a number of others in the fantasy football world, thanking CMC for that stellar performance that launched me past round one into the second round. It would have taken Seth Mike 2 swaps of players in order to make up that 9 points or so. So it really wasn't one mistake. It would have taken some choices that would have really gone against projections and what most would have thought. But as it came up earlier in the week when we talked about potential score, perfect roster score, well, a perfect roster score for Kamish would have ended up at 166, and for Seth it would have been just 145. So even if both had done perfectly, result would have been the same. So Kamish moves on, round 2. We'll take a look at the bracket here in just a minute. Aaron took care of business. He was definitely taking care of business. And we thank him for that. I'm sure Keith does not thank him. He probably was really starting to think about that acceptance speech, what would have been certainly intolerable and would have launched 1,000 retorts, I'm sure. But it is not to be. There will be no three-peat. There will be no 4-time champion. Aaron takes care of business pretty handily there, blowing him out by 47 or so. Really, when we think about Aaron's score, Baker Mayfield had the best game of his season. In fact, 10 points better than his previous best. So he was definitely riding the hot hand there. And Godwin also had his best game of the season. And so between those two, it was just way too much for Keith to overcome. We look at what the potentials could have been. Aaron could have hit 183 with a perfect roster, and Keith could have hit 136 and a half with a perfect roster. So firepower definitely on Aaron's side. He rolls through. We'll see what he can do in the next round of the playoffs. Speaking of the next round, even though our number 1 and number 2 seeds had the week off and didn't actually play, wanted to comment on their scores. John actually kept in practice. He ran through his normal routine, started his lineup, made some adjustments there, and scored a week high 171, showing that, again, he can bring the heat here. He's got some serious points behind him. And as we mentioned earlier, his perfect roster would have put him at 210, which was pretty impressive. Gloop looks like a pretty normal 131 until you look at the roster and realize that he didn't even start a second wide receiver, which is a little concerning because he still scored 131 points. And what's interesting is his perfect roster would have been 216, which would have been the high for the week. So while he didn't try this week, took the week off, rest up, get back in game shape for this coming week, he certainly had the points available to him to take out anyone else on the board. So we'll see what happens there as Aaron suits up to take him on. We look at the consolation ladder in games that did not make any difference, won't make any difference to the end of the season. Jersey Birds. Ian has the wonderful privilege of posting by far our lowest score of the season at just over 56.5 points. Beats Alex Billy's 74.5 by 18. So not even close, not even pretending to be close. Slid way under that previous low to come in at a score that would seem to be nearly impossible with how many changes we've made and how many 200-point games we had this season. Maybe he really took to heart the fact that this first game doesn't really matter in the consolation bracket. But had he rolled out that perfect roster, he would have been at 122, a definitely more respectable score. But c'est la vie. We'll move past it and won't worry about it. Light Rail Coyote punches his ticket there, 134. Punches his ticket to the second round of the consolation ladder. I don't know. That doesn't even make sense. But 168 would have been his perfect roster score. Now, Pet Detectives and Alex Billy, that was kind of a fun score because it did, in fact, come down to that last interception by the Brownie defense. Improbable, unlikely. Couldn't have just batted the ball down and walked off. Nope. Had to get that interception. That extra 2 points pushes Alex Billy past, or actually he holds on because Pet Detectives, Joe was trying to come in on Monday night, but holds him off by half a point in a game that didn't really make a difference. Just because I don't want anybody to feel left out, Pet Detectives' perfect roster score would have been 129. Alex Billy's would have been 143. So still some points behind those rosters should you choose to actually play them in the right way. Put them in the game, essentially. So as we look ahead to our games for this coming week, our second round of the playoffs, this will be a fun one. So we see that now Commish and Poncho face off against each other. This will be a fun one. Poncho's bringing the heat here lately. Did he overplay in the game that didn't matter? His last game, the bye week. Will he be able to post a similar 150, 160, 170? Or will Commish get the hot hand at the right time and see if CMC can light it up, or maybe somebody else on that roster do something and push to the championship round. We will see how that goes. And we've got Aaron against Gloop. We'll see. Both of them are fully capable of scoring points on any given week, as we saw with the 160 that Aaron posted last week. We'll see what the projections say as the week rolls on and who will end up in the championship round. Not to leave out Houdat, Keith, and Seth Mike. They will play each other for the first of 2 consecutive games in the fight for 5th and 6th place. So super exciting game there in that winner's consolation ladder. But as we look at the consolation ladder, the losers bracket here, this is the game that matters the most. If you are a winner this week, no matter which game you're playing, you move up to game 5, game C5 as it notes there in the ladder here. From that spot, you are fighting for 7th or 8th place. You cannot be in last place. If you lose and you get down to game C6, then you must win that final game to keep your naming rights. So start your lineup. No pressure. Make sure you're as close to that perfect lineup as you can get. Don't post a 50-point game, or we're going to be changing your name next year. Enjoy the second round of the playoffs.